All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another show at the IWCA. This is Nick Thurston, your host, sitting here with Sheila Smeltzer of A Plus Pro Services out of North Carolina. Where exactly in North Carolina, Sheila?
We're southeastern North Carolina. You wouldn't know the town.
I wouldn't know it, but somebody might. She's out there. She's also, you're chairing up the glass committee this year, right?
I am. Yes, I am.
IWCA. And we've also got Tom Trinen, owner of Service One out in Chicago. Tom, you sit on that glass committee. You've been on there a long time too, right?
Yes, I've been on it since about 1998.
Very cool. Very cool. So thank you guys for being here. This is exciting. We're going to talk, or you guys are going to tell us a little bit about something that the IWCA has been working on for quite some time, a document that is basically going to be a field guide for all glass related issues, things like that you're going to see out in the field as a professional window cleaner. And you guys are referring to that as the Guide to Architectural Glass for Professional Window Cleaners, or for short, Glass Guide.
The Glass
Sheila,
Guide.
First and foremost, Sheila, the Glass Guide. First and foremost, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into window cleaning, and also how you got involved with the IWCA. And then Tom will do the same with you, and then we'll get started.
Okay, sure. Real quick, I married a professional window cleaner. He kind of dropped the ball. I picked it up. I kept running, built a company out of it. So that was 99. I've been on my own since 2006. 2006 was also the year that I applied for a scholarship to go to my first IWCA convention. With the separation of husband, we were on a project and there was a lot of scratch glass on a construction job that we were doing. I was a total rookie. I was really raising kids and in the office, so I didn't know anything. And I went online and started searching, and that's how I found the IWCA, because I wanted to know more about why certain glass units scratched while other glass units did not scratch on the same job with the same people and the same tools. And that's what brought me into the glass committee. And I've been here ever since, since 2006.
Sounds like fate.
Yep. So we're just like most people, window cleaning, pressure washing. We're primarily residential, and we do some buildings, low rise.
Very cool. Very cool. And Tom, what about you? What's your background? How'd you get involved?
So I started in the window cleaning industry, cleaning windows in college, 1977. I hate to say it, but it's been 44
Love it.
years.
I was 2 years old.
So I've been doing this way too long, but I love it. And I started my own company in 1984. We started doing business, union work downtown Chicago in 1986. And we're now the second largest union window cleaning company in Chicago. We're real proud of what we built. We believe we're the best window cleaning company out there, of course, at least in our market. And I got involved in IWCA. I was a charter member. Sad to say I was not at the first convention, but I just didn't hear about it, I guess. But we started talking about the IWCA at the Building Service Contractors Association for about 10 years, 7 years or so. I attended all of those conventions. Marty Racenstein, guys like Chuck Dedden, and I could go on, and I'm sure I'm missing a few names, of course, but we started talking about splitting off from the BSCA and forming a real window cleaning association back then. And I've been at a lot of conventions.
So you're a founding member, Tom?
I'm a charter member. I'm not sure if I'm a founding member, because I think you have to go to the Lubbock to be a founding member.
I got it. Okay.
And I can't claim that, but I've been doing this for a long time, and we've had our ups and downs like anything, but we very, very interested in the chemistry of glass and exactly what Sheila said about some glass scratching and some glass not scratching. And one of our big markets, we've always had good successes doing final construction cleaning. And that's something I was going to talk a little bit about today too, is a couple of bigger projects that we have going.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Tom has so much experience. And so I know that the stories that he's going to share is going to be very beneficial to people watching, other window cleaners.
Yeah. No, I'm excited for that. Thank you for being here, Tom. Appreciate your time. You as
Oh,
well,
sure.
Sheila.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for asking me. So,
Of course, of course. So Sheila, let's hop right into it. Tell us, what is this glass guide? How did this come about?
Yeah, thanks. So this is the big project that the glass committee is we're in the final lap of this marathon. And so I'm very excited. What it is that an educational guide for window cleaners in regards to glass surfaces has been something that the glass committee has been working on for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
And my personal passion with it is because I think it's important. There's a lot of science, just like Tom said, there's a lot of science and chemistry in regards to glass surfaces. My personal mission is that I've always felt as window cleaners, we need to protect the integrity of the surfaces we work on. We're in cleaning and maintenance of glass surfaces. So it's very important that we understand them so we know how to work on them in proper ways. And even more so today with all of the glass products that are on the market, it's consistently, I mean, it's changing every day, new products and surfaces that we're working on. And not to mention that sometimes we work on products where, window units are installed inside out, and we may be up against a low-E coating or those kinds of things. So being able to identify those as a professional so that you know how to protect and maintain those, that's what I'm passionate about. And that's really the mission of the guide, is to be an educational piece. So it's anything that a window cleaner, we had to come up with anything that a window cleaner could come across in the cleaning and maintenance of glass on glass. And that's what's in here. So it goes through history, composition, manufacturing of glass, different types of glass, how glass is installed in units, window parts and terms, which is very important when you're, especially residential, when you're working on operating windows, to be able to know what the parts are so that you can, explain problems when they happen to your clients, surface issues and identification, restoration, routine and non-routine cleaning and maintenance. There's a difference, cleaning tools and products, and then it completes with bulletins and standards. So that's basically the table of contents, which is comprises the glass guide.
That's awesome. And I just wanted to say, I love what you said there about if this is our profession, we should know what we're working on, right? I know there are people out there, and not hating on anybody, but they're thinking, well, it's just glass. I just have to know how to get the dirt off of it, right? But just imagine how much that'll set you apart if you go in as a professional and you know what you're talking about to the customer. You can explain, this is the type of glass you have, or this is what we're going to see on these surfaces, so we have to clean it this way. You're just going to be that much more knowledgeable and come off more as an expert in your industry to that customer. You're going to sell more jobs, do a better job, and more importantly, like you said, not scratching the glass, not damaging the thing that we're supposed to be making look prettier in the first place. Because for one, it'll make you look bad as a company. And number two, the liability can be extremely hefty. I mean, in my company, I don't like talking about this, but we've had to replace some glass, and it was a claim close to $100,000. So, and that was one piece of glass.
You're not alone.
It adds up. Yeah.
And window cleaners don't really start to pay attention until they're under that type of litigation, or they have that builder call them with that dreaded phone call, or that homeowner, and that's when people start to perk up and say, oh, maybe I need to know something.
Right.
So hopefully we're giving them something where they can be more proactive. And by the way, this glass guide, it'll end up on, if you're a member, it will be free to you, and it's going to end up in digital form on Campus IWCA. And Campus IWCA is something that I log on to and use as a training module for new hires. So anyway, it'll be an excellent training source for anybody that wants to hire their own team.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, train their team.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I'm super excited for this to be available to start training our crew on. I mean, we teach them the basics, of course, but there's going to be a lot in this that well, I shouldn't say even I, but
Oh, everybody.
everybody could
As
benefit
I
and
go
learn from.
through it,
Yeah.
as we're proofreading and I'm reading through it, I'm learning the whole time. You're just reinforcing these different topics, and
Great.
it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does this look like for the members? How is this going to be able to put out in the field? And with that, we could start getting into those projects that Tom's been working on and really seeing the value of this and this information.
Yeah, so again, it's going to be available on campus IWCA. I know we're going to have it available in digital format, and we're still trying to figure out exactly what that's going to look like. And because, you know, you have to think about copyright and things like that. But you could put it into an app. It could be an awesome app. We've loaded it with photos. That's really been something that's been taking a lot of time. And the Glass Committee has collected photos for years and years. And so we've really tried to put them in the right places in this, because photos really, photos with glass can be very difficult. So we're limited. But yeah, we're trying to make it so it's visually easy to read through. It's you know, bulleted. And so you know, you can find what you need and go to it and learn. If you're just wanting to look something up really quick. And yeah, I mean, an app is something I dream about. We'll see.
I agree. We'll have to push the IWCA. We'll get it made for you guys.
Hey, we up that membership and we'll be able to put it together. No problem.
Very good. Very good. So Tom, you've been on the Glass Committee for a long time, and your company deals with this all the time. And Sheila mentioned you have some big projects. You mentioned them as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about those projects and how it relates to what we're talking about today?
Sure. And like I said, we've been doing construction cleaning since day one.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had, me personally, it's going back many years, but personally burned about 6 windows with hydrofluoric acid. and that's when I stopped. I said, I'm a pretty smart guy here. And it took me 6 until I figured it out. We've seen window cleaners that work for us and other companies, you know, destroy half of a building before they say that we need to stop. So we've been very cautious over the years. And part of what the IWCA has helped is back in 2001, 2002, when we really started digging into the relationships with GANA and the glass manufacturers, and when they kept insisting that you cannot scrape glass, certain types of glass, you can't scrape coated, tinted, pyrolytic finishes, certain hard coats, like certain low E hard coat and soft coats have metal in them. Okay, acid eats metal. When you you know, I don't know, when you were younger and you take some muriatic acid and pour it on the sidewalk and watch it smoke, it's essentially eating the metal of the sidewalk. It's eating the sodium and the calcium. And that's what happens with window cleaners when they use acid on a tin side, on any kind of coated glass where it's like a 50-50 chance that it's in there with the tin side out. And there's been so much glass that's been ruined, number one, with acid, number two, by using razor blades inappropriately. And we've all, you know, we don't completely ban razor blades, but on construction cleanings, we insist our guys don't use razor blades except the 1 inch. And again, it's amazing how the 1.5 inch really doesn't scratch. I don't know why, but that's what GANA says. We've been doing that for about 25 years now. And we've developed a good following with a lot of the general contractors, a lot of the glass companies, because they know that we're not going to ruin their glass. And so a couple of the projects that we've done just recently, I want to talk about one of them is the Bank of America Tower in Chicago. It's 817 feet tall, 57 floors. It's got a Mantech BMU, but it also has on 2 sides of the building, the 2 biggest elevations glass fins that run the entire length. So we've been on this building now since last June. It'll take us another 3 months or so to complete it. And
Wow.
part of that is it's got a BMU. You can't do anything more than, a 3 wide, and dealing with, Chicago winters, dealing with just when they take the BMU away from you because they need it for something else.
Yep.
And just weather. Wind is always window cleaner's worst enemy. And we're getting through the building, but because the glass is some of these towers, and this is part of my, just what we're talking about today on some of the bigger towers in Chicago, the glass is sitting in there for 2 to 3 years before anybody cleans it. And then they expect you to clean it with just, a straight wash, a couple of passes. And so we all know that's not reality anymore. And so you end up doing really what the glass guides talks about is we segregate everything into regular cleaning and non-routine cleaning. And part of this is going, in a sense, to play into the GANA specs and the warranty issues, essentially saying to the client, you've got glass that is essentially ruined, even though you think it's brand new. Mm-hmm. We cannot clean it without either using razor blades occasionally. And we'll talk separately about concrete and cleaning with razor blades. But one of the things that we've started doing is as soon as we identify a glass with a lot of concrete on it, we don't touch it. And then we come back and we sit there with the general contractor, show them what we're up against. They give us the approval to either use razor blades. They may have a consultant watch us. But a lot of it's just about documenting where the concrete is, and that if we can clean it and it doesn't get ruined, everybody's happy. If it ends up getting scratched or needing polishing, which is something that we can do, they want to document that. They want to track the time. They want to know who's going to pay for it and back charge somebody for it. So
sure.
Something that we've learned is just you've got to have a very good process in place so the guys don't just say, let's just clean it. We're on the 50th floor. Let's get this done. And we're doing very well documented drawings. We educate our guys on the scaffolds and on chairs. It's a little more difficult on chairs to start taking photos and noting exactly what floor it's on. But that's been our strength, is also with the general contractors, is sending them the reports and just saying, we're not going to clean anything without approval in terms of using something more aggressive than just regular soap and water. Right. And we know that, you end up using abrasives, microcrystalline abrasives. There's a lot of products out there, some of which work on one job and don't do anything on the next one. And that's another thing, is just trial and error and documenting, doing it on a small test area so you don't ruin anything.
Right. Tom, sorry, real quick. You've mentioned the name GANA a few times now. Can you just, for those that don't know, explain who that is?
Sure. So there's, that's the Association for Glass Manufacturers. GANA stands for Glass Association of North America. They are tied into NGA, National Glass Association. And they have, I don't even know when the first bulletin was that they published, but it was 30 years ago. And it took us up until about 10 years ago, I think the IWCA published a joint bulletin with GANA, where we both sat down and went through bullet by bullet, where they said something in their old bulletin, let's say, that we disagreed with. We'd work sometimes for 6 months on 2 sentences. They would agree to put it in front of their board, which would take another year sometimes. So publishing these GANA joint bulletins, which are now a few years old, I don't have the exact dates, but everybody references them now, and that's what you follow. And then if there are scratches, you go to the ASTM specs. There's 3 of them. Help me out, Sheila. I don't have the exact names of them, but
What, I mean, I think one's the 10-foot rule, right? Or
Right.
that's
Well,
the most common that's used, I believe, for window cleaners.
and
And
that's when you get a scratch, they identify,
oh,
there's
that's
a table that says the scratch is 2 inches long. You start at 3 feet back. It's really meters, but you start 3 feet back. If you can see the scratch, you go back to 6 feet. Basically, you end up at 10 feet. Ambient light. It has to be not bright sunlight, but very well lit.
I think that's what they call their standard for what's acceptable defects in architectural glass.
Right. And they discuss inclusions, there's scratches, there's blemishes, it's a chart, but basically when we're dealing with it, it's scratches.
Sure.
And there's one for flat glass and there's one for tempered glass, and you need to have both of them in order to, the chart is on one standard, and then some of the other descriptions of what you need to look at is on the tempered glass standard. And so those get used usually when you're behind the 8 ball and you've already created damage, or you showed up at a job where there's existing damage and you put the brakes on so you don't get blamed for it.
Gotcha. So safe to say that they know what they're talking about. They're experts in this field. So them in relation to how the IWCA works with them is a really good partnership, it sounds like.
It is. And it took many years to get to the position that it's in now.
Yeah. So this is
both
good
the
info.
ASTM standard and the joint GANA IWCA bulletin are on the glass guide, and they're also on the IWCA website. I take that back. The GANA IWCA joint bulletin is underneath the education tab, underneath glass committee, and then that's where you'll find it there. But both of those are included within the glass guide.
Beautiful. Yep. It's all good to know. So sorry, Tom, back to what you were saying.
So anyways, just talking about a couple of specific projects. The one was this Bank of America. Things went very well. But again, it took many years to get the relationships with the general contractors where they trust you on some of these projects. The other project that we're on right now is the Vista. It started out as Wanda Vista. It's a 111 well, it started as 111 stories. It got cut down to 101. It's 1,190 feet tall, 775,000 square feet of glass. The actual square footage of the building is 1.8 million square feet. It took about, and I've got a photo of it. It's a very interesting building because it undulates. It's all glass. There's 6 shades of blue. And one of the things that we're running into is blue glass, for some reason, absorbs certain UV spectrums or something where it just really bakes any kind of debris into the glass pretty good. We did another big hotel. It's on our website. It's 47 stories. Right out of the box, the construction cleaning was done once, and they didn't get any of the glass clean. Clark Construction came to us on that job. It's a Marriott in Chicago that just beautiful blue glass, but again, it baked it on. It sat for about 2 years. It took us 6 men about 7 months to clean the entire building off of scaffolds because you literally had to buff out every window.
Wow. That's a big project.
So for some reason, we seem like they're building a lot of glass with blue glass in Chicago, and it really absorbs the sunlight, and it really becomes tenaciously adhered a lot of times, mostly on the south walls. But so back to this Vista job. Let me just give you a couple more statistics, and then I can talk a little bit about it. It's the tallest building in the world designed by a woman. It's designed by Jeannie Gang Architects. And it essentially, if I send you a photo, Nick, can you put it up on the screen? Or how do I share my screen?
Can you just hold it up in front of your computer screen? Because we could see it good if you did that.
I can go grab one. I've got a,
Oh, that's okay. I thought maybe you just had it right there or on a different screen or something.
I've got one printed, but I'd have to take a break.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
Tom, I want to just ask you a question. When you get called in to quote a job like this, just take us through. So I'm in the residential field. So we have a bid form and we fulfill a bid form that basically is asking lots of questions. So whoever's estimating that job has identifiers to know what to look for. So when you're looking at a project like that, what are the things that you're looking for? What, especially because you're talking about height, so you can't just walk around it and see it.
Right. No,
So I mean,
something this big, we bid it off of drawings. We bid it in 2016 before they'd even dug the hole, because they need budget numbers, and partially because we have a good enough relationship with this general contractor because they've also had their share of scratch glass. They had a building that one of our competitors cleaned and did a pretty bad number on scratching the glass. It ended up in the courts and it was a couple $1 million lawsuit. We ended up polishing 92% of the glass successfully. It took 3 years and over $1 million in polishing. And then the 8% that we couldn't fix cost them another almost $2 million to replace. And this was a 40-story tower. So that was a little bit of background, but at the same time, we rebid this project again in 2018 or 19 or so after it was coming out of the ground. They had some delays, and that's also one of the reasons that the glass is needing a little bit extra care to get it clean because it has sat for so long. But also when you see a photo of the building, you'll understand it. It's very unique. Every floor steps out 5.5 inches for 10 floors, and then it steps back 5.5 inches every floor. So every 10 stories, it undulates. And it causes a lot of, there you go.
Is that the one?
wow.
Yeah. And that's a rendering. It's a good, gives you a good idea.
That's a beautiful building.
So it's just one large piece of glass, and the windows are huge. And so because of the setbacks, you get a lot of rundown, a lot of splash up from the windowsills. And again, just because it sat for so long, it's taken us 15 to 25 minutes a window to restore it by hand. And we're not using anything except microcrystalline abrasives. And they didn't really have any concrete issues. They did a beautiful job keeping the concrete off the building. And so it's not anything that they can really say is anybody's fault. It's just taken longer because the glass has been sitting longer, I believe.
So it's because the blue glass is absorbing the UV. It's kind of any of the air contaminants, just pollution in the air from being in the city. It's right there on the lake, I see. So anything that's floating around in the air is sitting on that glass surface, and the sun's basically baking it in a little bit more intensified on that blue glass. And
Correct.
that's what you're removing. Because when you're up at height like that, you don't have a lot of people working around that except for the installers, right?
Right.
So it's really just a lot of surface debris.
It is, and it's
not necessarily construction debris.
Correct. And acid rain is a real thing.
It is.
And it's interesting because we are finding damage only on the first, they have several terraces with the swimming pools and so on. And those first plates, there's definitely damage there from people leaning tools and ladders and whatnot up against it. But you don't see any kind of real scratches above areas where, the average person isn't hanging out.
So that project there, did you say you're still working on that one?
Yeah, this one's going to take us, and we're about 50% done. None of the BMUs are working yet because because thanks to COVID. So we're hanging temporary scaffolds on the building, which is a challenge. They've recorded 90-mile-an-hour winds off the lake there.
Wow.
On a regular basis. So it's pretty tough to work, but we're not quite sure if the BMU setback is helping us or hurting us, because we at least we rigged some 45-foot scaffolds on the building, and we can cover a lot more than what the BMU would cover. But we also have a lot more wind issues because of the there's only so much you can do to stabilize on a temporary board.
Right. Right. And so you mentioned this is a construction cleanup project. But as it relates to the glass guide, like, let's just say this was, this building's been up for 5-10 years now, and you're coming on site. Like, where would this glass guide come into play? What do people typically see on glass that's not construction cleanup, but might just be from neglect? Maybe they didn't clean it for a year or two, things like that, where this glass guide would come in handy. And what will it actually show? What will the glass guide show us? And maybe Sheila, you can answer that one. But yeah, as far as like, are we going to see pictures, and this is probably what you're looking at, and this is how you need to get it off, that type of thing? Can you go into a little more detail on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I had a list right here. I probably do. But I can pull up that list if you like. But basically, to answer your question, that's a great question, Nick. So there is an entire section that is surface issues and identification. So we have a photo. We've identified any type of issue that a window cleaner could come up against on a surface of a glass, on the surface of the glass, and we have a definition and an image. And so it's real short. It's just a definition and an image, so you can scroll through and really look at the photos, hopefully. And of course, there's a title there with what it is. And you should be able to hone it down to one or two things based on that one section in the glass guide.
That's awesome. So making it dummy proof, basically. So the guys like
I
me
hope
can
so.
look at it now.
I'm hoping it. I mean, I envision it as something that you could have in the field.
Yeah.
And that you can just reference. Imagine if you could send your window cleaners out in the field with something that they could just pull up to reference. I just think it'd be an amazing tool. But nonetheless, just documenting, just like Tom says, you see things out in the field, you have to document it. You can always go back and reference the guide, and it should, in about every 6 months, we are going to review the guide and make sure it's current. So it's not going to, it's going to be a working guide. It's going to be ever evolving because things change.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So Tom, in your experience, because you've got a lot of experience with the construction cleanup, what are some of those things that we would see on either that we would see in construction cleanup that we're not typically going to see in routine maintenance? Because I imagine most of our members and listeners here are probably not doing construction cleanup. That's a very involved process.
Right.
So for those that maybe aren't, like, what might just be on glass typically that as it relates to this guide and what we might see on there, and then maybe some tips on how to get that stuff off real, very briefly.
Yeah, and part of the GANA spec and part of the whole, just changes in how people think and how window cleaners have always thought about getting debris off, and it's always been with a scraper, and that's what they were taught. It sure works quick most of the time, but when it doesn't, that's where the glass guide comes in, and you can identify, if you look at it and say, if I never want to ever use a razor blade again, what do I need to know? And there's some of the most basic things are silicone. Okay, scraping silicone off a butt glaze joint, let's say, and it just keeps smearing. And you keep using a razor blade, it keeps smearing. You pull out a little bit of lacquer thinner, acetone, MEK, and yeah, you've got other issues, health issues, MSDS, gloves, goggles. But when you can remove something, just by wiping it off and never risking scratching anything, that's really what the GANA guide, and that's really what the glass guide is trying to promote is, like Sheila said, what do you know what you're trying to remove? I'm trying to remove paint. Okay, well, there's a bunch of different kinds of paint. Latex paint scratches or basically scrapes off usually. Yep. If you put enough water on it, it'll come off. It'll come off with steel wool. It'll come off with a white 3M pad. So these are all solutions, alternatives to using a razor blade. So you want to know basically what types of things will remove other debris. Okay. Right. And that's kind of what we go through is silicone, artillery fungus, just
right, you want to hear the list? I have it.
Yeah, just regular sprinkler stains. Okay, that's the most common for almost every window cleaner, whether it's high-rise or not.
Yeah, I mean that would be hard water.
Yep.
Okay, so surface issues and identification, chemical stains, sandblasting and pitting, roller wave distortion, failed IG units, low E corrosion.
You know, and some of these things are irreparable damage too, just like sandblasting, weld burn from welding right now.
Fines.
Oh, sorry, you froze up in the middle of that one again.
I know.
That's all right.
Right, that's all right. The good stuff is.
we'll guide him to go look at it themselves. And Tom was just saying, I don't know if you could hear him, that that a lot of the stuff that you're going to see might be irreparable.
Right.
There might be no fixing it. Like you mentioned, weld burns is a big one that I see all the time in San Francisco. So this guide will help you identify and know if that's something that you should even try to clean or not, right? Because you might cause more damage if you're trying to clean something by not having the knowledge ahead of time, knowing that this can't be cleaned, this can't be scraped off with a razor blade, such as a weld burn, things like that. And so I assume that's what we're going to see in that guide as well.
Yeah, and not only that, but we referred to Cody Thomas with Glass Renew in regards to even with, polishing compounds, mechanical polishing systems, what cannot be repaired.
Right.
So there's a big difference between what you can do by hand and what you can do mechanically. So we've included all of those things in the guide.
Awesome. Yeah. And good plug for Cody there. I was going to mention, if anybody hasn't watched we did a show with Cody Thomas talking about glass resurfacing and identifying some of those things. So go check out that video and go check out Cody's website, glassrenew.com. They have some awesome products for getting that stuff off, and more so than that, some great free trainings as well online. Reach out to Cody, tell him we sent you. He's a great guy. So Tom, going back to your projects, did you want to tell us any more about those and what you saw there?
Well, I think the big takeaway is find alternatives to using razor blades. Make sure that you put it in your contract that you're not going to use a razor blade unless they approve it. Because one of the things that, not on this project necessarily, but on some other significant projects that we've done, when you get into concrete, excessive concrete, if you don't make that their problem and enroll them into it, you're going to be the scapegoat. They're going to have you for lunch, and you're going to end up paying for the damage when all you were trying to do was get it off so you could look like a hero.
Right.
And it's funny because that was actually one of the mantras of the superintendent on this job, is he says, I don't need any heroes. You guys run into something, I just bring it to me. We're going to solve it together.
Right.
And that's one of the big mantras that we tell our people is that weld burn that you just found, A, they knew about it and we're trying to just see if you've caught it, or B, you will look like the hero because you didn't touch the window, you brought it to them, and the welder just finished two weeks ago. So the guy, the GC has some repercussions. They can go back to them and back charge them or deal with it that way. And you look like a hero because all you did was report it.
Right. And on that note, just just talking about educating your client or being educated so that you can educate your client ahead of time. And when you catch those things, and you were talking about not using a razor blade unless you get that approval. And that goes back to another thing the glass committee has out there for us is that waiver, right?
Right.
So if they do ask you to use a razor blade, even though you recommend against it, or say, we're not sure if this is going to scratch this glass, there's a good chance of it, et cetera, that waiver can be put into place. Can you tell us about that just a little bit?
So the waiver just helps, and not everybody's going to sign it, but a lot of it is just language that says, if number one, this routine versus non-routine is a real important concept, because it scares them if you explain it properly, because you're basically saying this glass is already damaged, and what's going through the GC's mind is, I got a 10-year warranty on this glass. It's B is whatever you're going to do to remove these stains that maybe are my fault as the GC, because I spilt the concrete or whatever. You want to help them get through that without damaging anything, and by educating them and using the least aggressive methods so that they can kind of document what you're doing and be okay with it. So
yeah.
And the other thing on two of these projects, even though we had given them budget numbers, we had given them updated budget numbers, a year later, when we actually started the project, we went out and did some sample tests and showed them how bad the glass was. And that's really helped sell the job, because they saw that, a straight wash, it hardly looked any different. Yeah. And that scared them, because they realized that we were the only ones that were actually bringing this to their attention too, in real time. So,
right.
Don't just throw a number out there and hope to hear back from them, if you want that.
Yeah. And I heard you mention earlier, I believe you said something about the cost of replacing the glass versus having somebody that knows what they're doing, restoring it or doing that. Can you speak to that a little? Because I don't think people understand or fully know how big of a difference that is. And if you come off as the expert and you're educating especially in the construction cleanup space where the general contractor is still involved with the building, obviously they're going to want to go with the cheapest route or the most inexpensive route to get essentially the same result. Right.
No, that's true. And they are getting more and more educated, and unfortunately, a lot of times it does take a project to go south where they realize how expensive the glass replacement is. We did we still do Soldier Field. In 2004, when Soldier Field did the reconstruction, their skylight windows, the way they explained it to us, it was the best glass ever made and the most expensive glass. And it turns out back then, it was $25,000 for one window. So we're on the project, and I'll run into a couple of windows, about 20 windows with stains on them, just rundown stains. It looked like, hard water, but it was mostly just ugly rundowns coming from somewhere, obviously. It looked like somebody spilled something on it. Glass company said, don't use anything except soap and water. So how do we get these stains off? So they bring a guy in from Germany, blah, blah, blah. He says, let's try vinegar. And I wish I could bring the photo up, but we have a picture of our guys on the scaffold, just, all dejected, and the consultant inside with his binoculars, and the vinegar just completely ruined the glass. Ooh. Long story short, and then that turned into a circus. 3 weeks of people flying in, Germany, they hired Weiss Janey, just, it was probably 10 grand just to write the spec of how they were going to take the glass out, crate it, who was going to observe it, ship it, test it. They came back, I don't know how many thousands of dollars, and they said it's normal construction debris. And Turner Construction was beside themselves, because they wanted to charge somebody for it. They wanted a reason.
Yep. Yep.
And again, this glass was almost unrestorable, because there was no way to get these stains off without scraping it. So they ended up replacing many windows. We ended up doing some restoration with just a product called Restoro, which is very, it's just silica sand. There's no chemical reaction. It's insoluble in water. It's just a very fine abrasive, and it actually polished off a lot of the stains, but it took a while. And this was way before Glass Renew.
Yeah. So do you have any idea? I mean, you said $25,000 per window, but is that like installation costs and everything, or is that just the glass?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe it was, and what it is today, they still have windows that pop occasionally, but the whole point is you look at some of this glass and go, come on, you're kidding me. That's $25,000. And it really is.
Yeah.
We just bid a job that is coming out of the ground. They have the lobby glass is 40 foot tall, one piece of glass. It's super laminated. I think it's 6 sides, but they were explaining to us too, it's the most sensitive glass. You can't use anything on it. And I'm just curious to see it get installed 40 foot tall. It's going to be crazy.
That's nuts. Yeah. So I know we're running pretty high on time here. So is there anything else you guys wanted to add in before I let you go?
If I may, I'd like to just plug, because Tom talked a lot about the use of razor blades.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience in being on the glass committee since 2006 is scrapers have always been an acceptable tool for cleaning windows. But the easiest way, because there's so much science behind this, okay? But me being average window cleaner, having training window cleaners, the easiest way to describe the use of a blade on glass is it's not so much the blade that's damaging the glass, but debris. So I always say blades don't scratch glass, debris does. So anything that's on the glass that you're trying to remove that can get lodged, or it could be concrete, it could be anything, and it could be aggregates, it could be any kind of rock. If you live in Colorado, you've got a lot of that floating around. If you live at the beach, you have a lot of sand floating around. So anything that's harder than the glass, by any tool that can get trapped underneath your window cleaning tool, it could be your strip washer, you can cause scratching. So I just think it's really important. But because the glass products are changing so rapidly, there's so many variants of glass products out there, it's just very smart to keep that tool for very specific and intentional reasons.
Yep.
So I just kind of wanted to finish with that. That's just my own personal experience with razor blades and how I like to teach to use them.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Absolutely. I just wanted to say, like, this is all the kind of stuff that if you don't know it, you just don't know it. You know, and that's why this is so exciting for this to come out. I mean, I've learned so much on this, and I've been in the window cleaning industry. I know I don't look like I'm that old, but I've been cleaning windows for over 20 years now. And I grew up in a time where razor blades were just normal. If you saw something on the glass, you just took a razor blade to it. You didn't even think about it. I can't, and the other thing is, a lot of times you don't see those scratches until later, right? They settle and you don't see them until a couple days later. So you won't even know you're scratching the glass until the customer calls you and says, hey, all our windows are messed up. And then going back to that liability, for one, make sure you have the proper insurance in place just in case. And I'll just throw it out there. Make sure you have care, custody, and control coverage, because otherwise they're not going to cover it.
Right.
And number two, just having this type of resource to know ahead of time what you're getting into. And of course, it's just going to come over time of doing this and seeing it out there. And you're not going to get to Tom's level just by reading this document, but you will over time, by seeing these projects and becoming more educated and educating your clients. And it's just, this is so exciting. I don't know if you can tell. I'm excited to get a hold of this. And I just thank you guys for all the hard work you've put into this. And I know it's been a long time coming. It's going to be good.
We're in the home stretch, Nick.
Yes.
Our hopes is that the glass guide and this material will be ready for the convention in Orlando in March for the
Beautiful.
IWCA convention. So that's our goal.
Excellent.
And we're really in the final stage. So we're in the proofreading, getting ready to be in the proofreading stage, and I think we'll be ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited for it. So Tom, unless you had anything else, I just wanted to ask you both, and we'll start with Sheila, ladies first.
Sure.
If you had one tip to give professional window cleaners regarding this topic, what would it be?
Ooh, one tip. Well, I kind of already gave you my little nuggets about scrapers, gave you my little nugget about protecting the integrity of the glass. I guess one thing that came to mind that I'd like to just share real quick, and just because I've been in litigation over damaged glass, is I think window cleaners need to understand that when you work on the glass, and if you were to cause damage, that is considered in an insurance company's mind, it is considered faulty workmanship.
Yep.
So it is not, liability is not going to pick that up. Liability is for an accident of some sort to happen. Okay. So that's just, I think, a really important thing. You know, I had to learn that the hard way. And we can that's a whole nother topic we can get into, but I think that's just a very important thing that I'd like to share that I think a lot of window cleaners do not understand. They think, oh, my insurance is going to cover this. No, you're going to have to prove that it was not your workmanship where that damage came from. And that is very difficult to do. Yep. So that's what I'm leaving you with.
Yep. Thank you for that. And I agree with that. I mentioned my my mishap on that one piece of glass, and that was exactly what happened. It was an accident. It wasn't our fault. It wasn't workmanship. It had to do with the flooring and the machine we were using, a boom lift, and it malfunctioning in a certain way. But anyways, like you said, it's impossible to prove, and these big insurance companies have much better lawyers than you can afford, I promise.
Sure.
So make sure you have the right coverage in place. Thank you, Sheila. What about you, Tom?
So similar to what Sheila said about razor blades, one of my observations and just one of my first things that we train new window cleaners on is if you are going to use razor blades, especially the big ones, the 6-inch, interior partition glass, railing glass, escalator railing glass, doors will always scratch. That's my first advice. I don't care how careful you are. They're just so much more susceptible, maybe because they're fully tempered, I don't know. But any kind of floor to ceiling windows are typically much more susceptible to scratching when you scrape them. And my second tip goes back many years. You get a window covered with concrete, okay? In the old days, you pulled out muriatic acid, it ate it away, damaged the frame, but it got rid of that concrete without a whole lot of scraping. One of our techniques is you take newspaper, which is kind of hard to find these days.
Yeah.
Spray it on, put water on the window, put the newspaper up there, and just keep soaking it with a spray bottle, and let that concrete just absorb as much water. Take it off, do it again, and just try to agitate it without scraping it, and agitate it without having the concrete scratch, because the whole point of concrete is it will eventually break down. There's also a product called Crete Buster, CRETE Buster. I know some Racenstein and some of these other guys sell a concrete remover for windows. It's much better to use something like that than to try to just hack away at it with a razor blade.
That's awesome. That's an interesting tip with the newspaper. I've never heard of that one. That's cool.
So we used to, I used to install solar film, and you guys all, I'm sure you've been hired to remove solar film.
Oh yeah.
Same, that's where I learned it, was the same trick was, you know, again, you can score you run the risk of, you know, scratching the window, but the whole point is to get water behind that solar film. And so that was something we used to do, was just put newspaper up, do 5 or 10 windows, and just for a half hour, you do nothing but soak those down. And then eventually the glue just gives way, and it comes right off.
Yeah.
So Tom, does that method work for factory film? So film that comes from the factory on some of these higher end residential units, you know, they come with the
Oh, so
factory
like the
protection.
middle?
Yeah, because our builders like to leave that on for a good 2 summers baking in the North Carolina sun.
I don't know if it would work or not, because the plastic may not absorb the water like you'd want it to, but it's worth a try.
Interesting.
Again, I think that's where you'd want to use something in the water to so it sticks to the glass. You know,
Yeah.
some glycerin or something that just makes it a little bit diatropic. I don't know what the word is.
Sure. Yeah. More elastic or yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man, this has been awesome. Thank you so much, you guys, for your time and being on here with us and for sharing. This has been, I have learned so much from this already. Like I said, I'm excited to learn more. I just wanted to say one more thing. Tom, when you were talking, you talked about the importance of being able to educate your customers. I know I've said this a few times, but more so than that is the documentation, right? Letting your customers know when you see something, instead of just trying to fix it and then going to them afterwards and saying, hey, you know, we tried to get this off, but we screwed up the window. You know, educating your crew first and foremost to, you know, take pictures, document where it's at, that kind of thing. That's huge.
Right.
Bringing it to them ahead of time. I've personally learned in my business, if you bring a problem to your customer before you touch it, they're very grateful. If you touch it and you screw it up, even though you're trying to do them a favor, right? Trying to be that hero for them, they're going to blame you for it and they're going to make you take it, you know, pay for it. Right.
Right.
So that's just huge. And so thank you for bringing that up. And then also, like you said, getting the approval before you go to touch something with a razor blade or anything that you think might not be the right way to go about it, or you're not sure about it, you know, just talking to your customers ahead of time saying, we can try this. Do you approve this method? Doing a test spot, like you said, is huge. Right.
And a lot of times that may take a day or two, because they're going to want, you know, send it in writing, and they're going to want approval from the glass company, but it's worth it to just shut down the job, or even if that's what it takes, you know, work in a different area.
Yeah. Losing a couple days labor is better than a big claim, right? Or losing the customer, you know, altogether.
Yeah.
So anyways, like I said, unless you guys have anything else you want to share, I'll let you get out of here. Again, thank you so much. This has been really awesome.
Thanks for having us on, Nick. Thanks for joining us, Tom.
Thank you.
You're a wealth of knowledge.
Appreciate it.
All right. And to the rest of you guys, check out the website for when that goes live, and hopefully it'll be coming up at the convention. We hope to see you guys all there. That's March 22nd through the 26th. Ooh, wow, we're coming up. We got just a couple weeks, and I'm excited to see you guys there. Tom, I'll see you there and meet you there, right?
Maybe.
Okay.
Deciding if I'm going to make it or not.
Yeah, this is a weird year for everybody. So, but Sheila, I know I'll see you. We got some work to do.
I'll see you there.
All right, you guys, take care. Thanks again.
Bye, Nick. Bye, Tom.
Thanks, Sheila.
Thanks, everybody.